first session of the internship in the web development. Let me share my screen. I'm hoping everybody has joined with their laptops. Ellarum install cheyittunde Node.js Git. അത് ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ലെങ്കിൽ just keep note that it is important to have that. If you follow along, you'll be able to learn better. We will start off with the very basics of web development. You guys know what a browser is, right? And you guys know what a server is. When you are making a website, let me just open up a whiteboard real quick. When you're making a website, the first thing you should keep in mind is that there are two main things you have to worry about for a project. You have your front end, that is your client. It's a browser, right? This is your browser, and then you have your backend, and then you have the connection in between. This is your front end or your client, what you see like on the screen, and your backend is what is running on the server. Server basically is just another computer running somewhere else that is serving the files to you. And usually the way you connect or like show data in the front end is by connecting the front end and the backend through something called an API. A lot of you will probably be very comfortable with front end. Front end like HTML, CSS, JavaScript ഒക്കെ വരുന്ന. Back endilum JavaScript ഉണ്ട്, but you also have a lot of other languages like C#, Java, PHP, അങ്ങനെ കുറേ languages ഉണ്ട്. Let's start off with a basic structure of how a website works. നമ്മളൊരു പുതിയ project തുടങ്ങാം. Let's make a new project, right? How do we make a new project? Let's just open up a folder. Let's just make a folder, right? Test web or something. And do you guys have VS Code installed, by the way? Like any code editor undo? Illengil adu install cheyano. It is important to have that. Anyway, once you have that, for a basic website, or like the most basic website, is just an HTML page. Now index.html page undaki, and I opened it. By the way, VS Code there's this nice shortcut with exclamation mark enter like type cheythu enter adicha, it will auto fill this thing for you. This is a web page. Now if I try to open this using my browser, you can see it says this is a web page. Ningalku white arikkum kanna. This is the actual thing. I have an extension to make it dark, but this is a very simple web page. This is the most simple web page you can possibly have. The index.html. So you could say HTML is used for describing the format of the entire thing. But how do you style something? You use this thing called CSS. Now if this seems very basic, that's because I'm building up to something here. Let's say I want to change the background color of the entire page, that is the body. So I could set the background color here to let's say black, and let me set the color to white so we can actually see the text. Now if I refresh, you can see the color has changed. I'm able to style the web page. That is why we use CSS. There's another technology in use, and that is called JavaScript. JavaScript is something that runs in all browsers. Compile and cheyanda avashyamilla, at least if you are having just JavaScript like this. If I try to just give a basic command here, let's say alert hello world, and I run this page again, you see how it executed something. this actually goes beyond just simple demos like this. എനിക്ക് വേണേൽ if I wanted to change the text of something, right, ഞാൻ ഇവിടെ hello world ഇട്ടേക്കുക. If I do this and then I make a script and I try to change the text of this, and by the way just ഒരു demo ആയിട്ട് consider ചെയ്താൽ മതി. Document dot query selector p dot inner text put by word. Now document is how you refer to the entire document. That's what it suggests. And query selector allows you to use CSS selectors like this to find elements in the web page. I'm just changing the text within this p tag. Now if I try to run it, it didn't work. Why? Because it first ran the script and then it executed. Let me take this and put it at the end. And now it has changed. It's important to note as well, like this goes from top down. So when my script was before the body tag, it executed the script first, then it rendered this thing. So it didn't have an effect. But when I take the script and I put it at the end, it has an effect. The same thing will happen when I use this thing called defer. Or I guess it didn't. There is an error. P is not. Okay. Well, usually if you use defer, it will actually, move it to the end of the thing. Before all these frameworks, people used to make websites like this. They would have an index.html page. They'd have many HTML pages. They would have CSS style sheets, and they would have JavaScript that they executed manually. And the first work but when you get simple websites, okay, fine. A simple portfolio website angle, you can easily make it with index.html, JavaScript, CSS. But if you want to make something like Google Drive or Figma or YouTube or Google Meets, this becomes very difficult. Track there's just so much code, bugs will keep coming up. So some very smart people at Facebook and many other companies came up with different frameworks. And by the way, I have only described like the front end. Either serve Jan, usually you will have a web server running. A web server is a program that serves the files. So for example, Jan code cheyatha or server. If I have Python, if I run python-http.server, you see how it is saying serve in HTTP on port 8000. If I try to open this, right? If I try to open this and I put index.html, look at this, it has the same effect. Exactly same effect alla. Yes, same effect. It loaded this index.html, but look at the address. The address is an IP address and there's a port number. What happened here? I web server open chedu. I started this program that is a web server, and its job is to serve files in like a directory that is related to websites. When I gave it this URL, the IP address and the port number where this web server is running, I can say, okay, give me index.html at this IP address at this port number, and it serves me the file index.html file. Now backends can be more complicated than this, but this is the most basic web server you can possibly have. Let's get to the more fun parts. What do we do when we want to make more complicated websites? We use these frameworks called React or like Svelte or anything else. I will choose to show you guys React because React is one of the most popular frameworks out there, and most of the jobs out there will be in React. React, you can find the documentation for React in this website called react.dev. They have some suggestions like using Next.js, but I'll show you from the beginning of how React works. To set up a project, first you have to plan a project. So you have to plan. And you separate backend vano. Do I want both to be in the same thing? And I'll explain what that means. A lot of frameworks like Next.js or any other framework, they are full stack frameworks, meaning you can have the front end and the back end in the same thing. What do I mean by that? I mean that browser sarnam and the thing that is responsible for giving data to the front end. Like database to connect the information at the front end load to sarnam, that is the back end, that is in the same code base. That is where frameworks like Next.js and Shadcn and any other framework comes in. Sometimes you don't want this. Sometimes what you want is a separate backend because you may have more than one front end. Maybe you're making an app and a website at the same time. Anganathe scenario anagil, it's probably best if you have the same one backend and many different front ends. Anganathe you will decide, okay, I want to split this and I want to split this. I don't want this to be the same thing. I guess I can show you both at the same both ways of doing things. Let's start off by creating a very basic React app. By the way, right? You guys understand what I'm saying. You can put it in the chat or tell me. Guys? Yeah, you understand. Okay. Let's make a very basic React app. And what kind of, let's make a to-do list. Let's make a to-do list. So my favorite front-end framework, and a lot of people's front-end framework now, is Vite.dev. Either this is not just limited to React. Vite is actually a tool for many different frameworks. You can have React, Vue, React, Lit. There are different frameworks on it. Basically, people have made different solutions to making front-end code bases more maintainable, easier to implement, etc. We will go with React TypeScript. I should probably explain to you what TypeScript is too. Now, when you look at, let me actually take the website directly. TypeScript. When you look at JavaScript, you don't need to really provide any types for everything. Like it will automatically take it. So if you decide to make a variable, right, any kanathilla, you'll just have the object directly, and that's very easy to use. But when you have a large code base, it is not very convenient because if you forget what the type of an object is and you don't have the code editor telling you what the type of an object is, it can lead to many kinds of bugs. So it is often better to use something that will check for these kinds of bugs. Make sure that the variable that you're using has the same type everywhere. If it is a string, it has to stay a string, unless you explicitly tell it that it is not a string. And you will understand that with experience, but for now, just follow what I'm doing. This is where you start following what I'm doing. Let's make a to-do list app. So I'm going to start by executing this command in a folder. So if you are on Windows, just open your file explorer, right click, open terminal. I am on Linux, so it looks different, but you guys must also have a terminal option. Enike inganathe oru setup undu, so I'll just execute it here. So let me paste this command. I will hit enter and I will follow the instructions that it tells me to do. What is the project name? Let's call it to-do list. What framework do I want? I want React. Do I want TypeScript? Yes. Okay, now it is telling me go to to-do list, npm install runche, and npm rundev. Before I start executing these commands, you're probably wondering what is Node.js? Before Node.js, JavaScript was a thing that only ran in browsers. Once people made Node.js, it was possible to execute the same JavaScript on a computer. So instead of making a web page and then running the scripts inside the web page, I am able to open a terminal, run node, and then I can just type whatever, console.log hello world, and it is able to execute JavaScript without a browser. There's no browser here. This is a terminal. So that opened up a lot of new avenues. It allowed people to make backends in JavaScript too, and also these full stack frameworks. So let's start. We have this basic project structure that we created using that command, and I will run the npm install command to make sure all the dependencies are installed. The dependencies are basically all the things that Vite.js needs to run properly. As you can see, there are two dependencies, React and React DOM, and there are a lot of dev dependencies that is just for comfort of the developer. This is installing. If you guys are following along, I will wait for you to finish running the same commands, and then you can tell me to continue. So just let me know when you guys are done with the command, and I'll continue. എല്ലാവർക്കും ഇതുവരെ മനസ്സിലാവുന്നുണ്ടോ? Like, are you guys following along?
സംശയം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കണേ.
Yes, yes.
ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ എത്രത്തോളം മനസ്സിലാവുന്നുണ്ടെന്ന് മനസ്സിലാകത്തില്ല. ഇത് പിന്നെ നമ്മൾ പ്രോജക്റ്റിലേക്ക് കടക്കുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും കൺഫ്യൂഷൻ ഉണ്ടാവാൻ പാടില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഇപ്പോഴേ തീർത്ത് പോകണേ.
Okay, fine. Let's continue. Now I will try to run the script npm run dev. You can see it has opened a development server, localhost at port 5173. If I open this in my browser, you can see they've already set up something here. Let's look at how this code base works. You've probably seen some CSS files. CSS already in Korea. I've already told you what CSS is. But there's also this new file format called TSX. If you chose JavaScript, it will be JSX. This is TypeScript, so TSX. Now, what is this TSX thing, and how does React really work? React basically is a full JavaScript. All of this is JavaScript, right? But within JavaScript, I am able to put this HTML style thing. We call this specific thing JSX. Basically, it is HTML, but it is inside of JavaScript. So, a pudiya file format. Now, here you have the div, idella HTML tags. You can see that, okay, here image under, that is this image, right? When I delete this and save it, that image goes away. You also noticed, here, if I delete that, that goes away, right? And everything else, there's the text, there's the card, all of that. Plus, in React, you are able to use these thing called event handlers directly within the JSX. So you can put JavaScript directly. This makes it very convenient for you to quickly develop apps or quickly develop websites. So now that we have this, and like this is automatically generated, I will start by deleting everything here. Just delete that to make sure there are no errors. I will put something here, and I will delete that. ഇതും ഡിലീറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം. ഇതൊക്കെ യൂസ് ചെയ്യാനില്ല. app.css ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നുണ്ട് ഇവിടെ. CSS മുഴുവൻ ഡിലീറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം. ബൈ ബൈ. Now we have an empty page. Main.css, index.css മാറ്റാം because there are lots of stuff here. Let's completely clear everything. White screen. Now we want to make a to-do list app. How do we make a to-do list app? Well, a to-do list, you need multiple screens, I guess. You need a way to add notes or add like lists. So let's do that. Let's create a basic UI. We'll do this by first putting the structure here. Let's say I need multiple cards. So I will keep track of the lists. Let's say I have a list. So we use this thing called use state from React. What is a state and what are hooks in React? State is how you track variables. You cannot use variables directly. If you want to track a value, you need to use this thing called use state. There is a specific thing about React in general. Because this thing is running JavaScript and it is taking care of rendering the HTML for you, you need to follow this framework's specific ways of handling stuff. How do you figure out something like this without knowing what the thing is? You read the documentation, and I expect you guys to do this when you're doing the projects as well. You guys just go to the reference, and there's all the stuff about this thing. Like if you want to know about specific hooks, this is use form state. Hooks here. There's the use effect, use state, all of these hooks. So like if you don't know something, you can very well just read the documentation or use AI. Anyway, let's start by creating a simple to-do list app, and the way we do that is we first need a button to make a new to-do list, I guess. So how do I do that? I make a new button here, and I say new list. Now I have a button here. I will style this button to make it look better. Let's give this an ID. Padding 10 pixels. Background color. Let's make this black. And text color white. As you can see, now we have a little thing here. We have a button. Now we need to make a new list. So I add an on-click listener. Let's say handle. Let's make a new function. We call this an event handler, and we will connect it to the button. So I'm executing it as a function. Actually, you can even get away with just doing this directly. I am passing this function to the on-click handler here. So now whenever I click the button, I can make it do something. Like for example, if I do console.log hello, and I click this button here, you see how it is printing hello 6 times. That's event handlers. Now if I want to keep track of use state, I guess I can even keep track of how many times I've pressed a button or clicked a button. And to do that, I will take care of it using this thing called useState. So let's say I have a counter, right? Let's call that counter, and I need to. This is the syntax on how to use useState. Let's set this to 0, and I'll print. I will show that in the web page using this syntax here. And let's say every time I click the button, I want to increment it. Set counter counter plus 1. You see how this changes? That is how useState works. There is another thing called useEffect. And useEffect has a syntax that kind of looks like this. Dependency. What useEffect does is that every time something changes, let's say counter changes, I can execute a piece of code that is not tied to the rendering of this UI. Because in React, wherever you cannot just put code at the start of the function, because then you will start having bugs, because React works like that. You have to use useEffect to execute code that you don't want to interfere with the UI. For example, if you want to get data from an API, right, from the backend, and it's like a network request, it takes some time to load. If you just put it directly in the app, you may or may not have issues. But if you put it in useEffect, you can almost guarantee that you won't have issues when you're rendering the UI. So that's it's a very basic example of useEffect. But you could also do it like this. You could just print counter, and every time the counter changes, it is executing this piece of code here. And to make it clear, I guess I can put a message here. useEffect counter. Oh, my bad. You can see it is executing the useEffect code every time the state changes. And you can put any number of states here. Or you can put no states at all. If you do this, it will only execute one time when the component renders, or when the function is called. Not when the function is called, when the component renders the first time. Now, this is all well and good, but I did say I will make a to-do list app. So let's actually look at how I would approach this if it was a real app. First thing ഞാൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത് is, let me get rid of this. I will install this thing, and this is a personal preference of mine, but I like installing something called Tailwind or Shadcn first. What is Shadcn? Shadcn is a component library. Like, instead of writing the code and all the buttons and everything myself, you can have nice looking components like this without having to write the code yourself. You can just install it and use it. Let me show you how you install it. You choose the framework that you're using. Next.js under Vite under React Router Kore under. We are using Vite.js, so we will pick Vite.js. And this is we already cheyidu. Next, we follow the instructions directly. Just make a new terminal. And I keep just following the instructions on this thing. It'll tell me exactly what I have to do. I will show you what Tailwind CSS is in just a little bit, but for now let me just set this up quickly. Copy that, paste that there. tsconfig. I'm just following instructions. The references under references paste that there. Right, edit tsconfig.app. Copy it is telling me to put it inside compiler options. So ഞാൻ എവിടെ tsconfig.app കണ്ടു, compiler options ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ട്. So അത് കഴിഞ്ഞ് just paste it there, because that's what this means, right? 3 dots. and then update Vite config. So copy that command, execute that command. Sorry, did someone say anything? Okay, that is installed. I will add this stuff to the Vite config.js. The order doesn't really matter as much. I guess ഇത് fully copy ചെയ്തു. ഞാൻ delete ചെയ്ത് just അങ്ങനെ തന്നെ ഇടാം. It's importing it and putting it inside the Vite config. And then run the CLI. Now I will show you the use of all this very, very soon. As you can see, it has automatically added stuff to the index.css file. Idella variables and CSS variables. Now I have a new components.json file. Components folder automatically varum. Now let me show you what the use of Tailwind is. Ippam sadharana CSS run when you write CSS, you will write CSS code. So like you will write body. You put all the styles here one by one like this. But there's a more convenient way to use CSS, and this is a personal preference, but a lot of people use this. Instead of using the CSS file, we use this thing called classes, HTML classes, and we would put the Tailwind classes inside of that. Adum documentation thanne undu. There's a site called tailwind.css. If you go to the documentation, everything is over here. Anything you need to do in CSS, that is available in Tailwind. For example, let me say I want to change the background color. So I set BG, and if you have the Tailwind extension installed, you can even just set the colors directly. Let's say I want it to be amber. And it is still white because I have not set the width and height. Let me do that. I'm basically saying width screen size, height screen size. Now you can see the color has changed because it's taken it from the class name here. And CSS onnu ezhuditilla. Tailwind is taking care of this. Now I also need some dialogues and buttons and stuff. So that is where Shadcn comes in. I can add buttons and all this other stuff very conveniently using these commands. I just looked at the command, copy it, paste it there. It will add the button, and I can just import it and use it. Force. Let me make this white for now. Okay, now you can see the components folder, run it under components UI button. If I import the button, and put it here, it's like the button we had previously, but it has some nice things about it. Why is it showing up like this? Alright. You have a button there, variant. Yeah, the variant. One second. Background color red okay. BG black. Text white. Now we have a button. And I will show you. Button, it doesn't seem very convincing, right? It looks like it's a very basic thing. But some of the other things are more impressive. So let's actually make the thing. Button, class name, BG black, text white, new list, and new list chembum. I need to keep track of the list. So let's make a dialog. Dialog evidaya. Dialog evident. What is a dialog? this is a dialog. In standard HTML, CSS, JavaScript, this would have been a little difficult to implement, but React വെച്ച് ചെയ്യുമ്പം this is much simpler to implement. ഞാൻ വെറുതെ dialog add ചെയ്യും. I follow the instructions here, right? Yes, suppose, and I can just make a dialog here. Dialog trigger as child, because I want my own custom button. Nearest dialog content, dialog header, let's call this new list, and then dialog dialog footer action under. There should be an action. Dialog, just a button. Yeah, okay, but it's just a button down. Now you're probably wondering how I knew the syntax. I can just see the syntax here. Also, when you're actually doing the thing, you can use AI. AI will come to autocomplete this much faster than I can. Now if I try to execute this and I say this, you can see that well, the Tailwind is a little messed up, but you can see that it has made a dialog here. If I try to close it, it works. If I style it, I can also get it like that. BG Vite. Now it looks like a real dialog. Let's add the actual stuff then. Now I need an input and I need a text area. Let's say input over there. Input. And text area. And I'll just keep importing those one by one. Import input. No, okay. Components UI. I don't know why, but my VS Code is misbehaving. I'll just put the input here. Styling looks kind of bad, I know, but when you're actually doing a project, CSS which you can do it. Input. Oh yeah, input works like this. The placeholder down. List title and the text area down. Oh, I didn't import the text area. Seems like my VS Code is misbehaving, but usually it will autocomplete this. Text area install island. Shadcn. My VS Code is misbehaving. Okay, text area.tsx. Text area. Placeholder. Enter details about task, and now that will show up too. Look at that, it has shown up. And if I put this within a form, and if I don't set the action, I put on submit or something. And I'll leave this blank for now. I'll come back to that. If I put a button here, let's say the button is create to do. Next, type submit, and let me give this a name too. Name and I need to handle the submission of this form. So let's handle the submission of this form. Let's make a new thing called handle submit. Actually, what would be better is handle new list. And let's take an event. And this is where TypeScript comes in. I can specify what type of event. It is a form event. How do I know this? It will tell me here. Handle new list. It is telling me form event. Form event is good. So now I can take the form event. So const form data equals new form data. Idake JavaScript aanu. This I cannot teach you fully because it will take too much time. This is something you can get from resources or AI and stuff. E.target. It is complaining. HTML form element. Submit event. HTML form element. It is complaining even more. Oh well, that's fine. You can just specify nothing then. When I have a doubt about what type something is, I can just do this and I will know exactly what it is. Form event HTML form element. Form element. It looks like it is still not letting me do that, so fine. I will just force it to be my type. Now it is not complaining anymore. It feels like a hack, but that's how it is. Now we have the form data. I can actually see what data has been submitted. If I do console.log form data.get title, and now if I try to let me make the styling more visible. PG black, text white. And if I set the title to something, and let me actually open the console, and let us say hello world here. Oh, my bad. It is restarting for some reason. Oh yes, I forgot. When you handle a form event, by default the browser's behavior is to go to a different path. You can see how title hello world has come here. I need to prevent this manually. The way I do this is by doing prevent default, and now it will not behave like that anymore. I will get the behavior I'm expecting. Hello world. That's wrong spelling, but you can see now it is console logging this. Okay, now I need to keep track of the thing that they are doing. So ഞാനൊരു പുതിയ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഉണ്ടാക്കാം. യൂസ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഉപയോഗിച്ച് I will make a new state. Import use state, and I will set let's say lists, set lists. This is the usual syntax of use state, and I will set it to an empty array. And if I want more type safety, I can even specify what the type of this is using this generic operator. You may have seen this in Java, maybe not, but yeah, this is how you do generics in TypeScript. I will specify my type to do list. Title is a string, and details is another string. And let's say it is an array of type to do list. Now I can guarantee that at least in compile time, this list will always be of type to-do list. So now let me add a new list to to-do list. So the way I do that is I do set lists. I take the previous value of the list using this function syntax, previous list, and then I return previous list dot concatenate a new list, a new object, and this object is of type to-do list. So you can see how it is giving me the error. It is telling me that it is missing title and details. Title and details I add cheyidille, it will keep telling me that there is an error. JavaScript il idu cheyyilla. Form data dot get title as string, so I can force it to be string, and details form data dot get details as string. How did I know this title and details? Because that is what they have given as name here. Name details, name title. So now it is adding it to the lists. How do I show the lists? Well, I can use this nice syntax in React or in JSX called, these curly braces here. So I can take the lists. The list is an array, right? And I use this thing called the map function in JavaScript. The JavaScript, pure JavaScript. What does map do? It takes each value from the list to do. I can name it whatever I want, right? And I can return any UI. So let me actually make a UI here. We have a div. If it is a h1 enough, and then let's put to do dot title. Here a paragraph tagger. To do dot details. The close down. What will this do? Every time there is a new thing in lists, it will add this div together. So let's actually show this working, shall we? New list. Make this app look better. Details. This app looks bad right now. If I create this, you see how it is shown up. If I do it again, look. And if I change this up to be add closing dialog box, please. You see how it is adding the thing one by one. That is how this map syntax works. It makes it much easier to do stuff like this. In standard JavaScript, what you would actually have to do is store it somewhere and then use a for loop to manually add each thing one by one by one, and that would have been kind of a weird syntax, a little more difficult to manage. Okay, so iduvare endengilum doubts undo? Are you understanding what I've been saying so far? Okay, that's good. So this is the basics of React, but there is way more than what I've just shown here. This is the most basic possible thing about React. To summarize, React is just a way to put like this UI stuff, HTML and like CSS within the JavaScript. All of this is just JavaScript, or a special kind of JavaScript called JSX. And it's used to make it much easier to divide components and like make it easier to create UI, because I can simply separate it into different files and I can make these functions that describe UI. Ningal Flutter ഉപയോഗിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ you have a similar concept there. It's not exactly the same, but it is similar. Now I know this doesn't look much like a to-do app right now, but if you just add a little bit of styling, like over here, if I say class name padding to background color PG neutral then margin the y-axis 1. Color will not be, I don't know if this gray is visible, but you can see I've changed the styling a little bit. I can even make this bold if I want to. Right, text, I can make it bigger and then font bold. See, it's bigger now. It's starting to take shape. Redesign on Ningle, of course, it's much easier to make it look way better than what it looks like now. Also, this behavior, right, you may have understood that, okay, in form and when you're creating the thing, you'd expect this thing to close, right? So the way you do that is, well, if you don't know how Shadcn works, you would actually look at the documentation, right? The documentation is, okay, idakke undu, but they also have this thing like docs and API reference. Let's click on docs and let's see where it takes us. Kore options kanikkum. These options are called props. Default open, on open change modal. What I can do is I can specify the props here. Open. You see that? It's showing up here. Now, how are props even created? Right? What does it mean to have props? What are props? You notice that this whole UI is described within a function, right? Function app, and this is empty right now. Usually functions undakumbom, I don't know if you guys have done like programming in general. You will realize that functions are like arguments, right? You can have stuff within these two parentheses here. That lets you decide what to put in there. About React, this is a function basically, so you can pass stuff to it. But React is expecting an object. This is an object. That's the curly brackets. In JavaScript, the curly brackets make an object. And in the object, you can specify what kind of data you can take as a component. For example, this button at the class name. That's why I'm able to do this class name here. Because this goes inside of this argument, and then they're able to use it like this. And then there is size, variant, as child, other props. If I look at input class name under type under, that is why I'm able to use type. But like there are also other props. Dot props will capture everything else. Like this, there are many things that you can put within the component like this. Whatever value you pass here, it will go as an argument inside this, and then you can use it within that function. There is another interesting thing about React. That is why they kind of call React a declarative way of making UI. There are other frameworks, of course. React Matranda. This is not just the only way to do things. There's also something called Svelte. Svelte in a various syntax. Playground. If you go to the playground, you see a script under. This React this Svelte. This is a completely different framework. Similarly, there are other frameworks like Vue.js. Like there are many choices to choose from. Some people like this framework, some people like Svelte, some people like React. It's really a personal preference. You guys should try out all of these things and you will understand what you like more. Okay, now this is purely front end. With this, if you wanted to do backend, you would probably use something like Express.js. Express.js is one of the most common ways. Everybody starts Express.js. Very simple. Instead of taking care of HTML and UI and stuff like that, this is used to make APIs. So you can send JSON and like data to a front end using this thing called Express. അതുപോലെ വേറെ കുറേ ഓപ്ഷൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. ഫുൾ സ്റ്റാക്ക് ഫ്രെയിംവർക്സ് നോക്കുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ there is this thing called Next.js. Next.js ചിലർ ഓൾറെഡി ഉപയോഗിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. Some of you I guess used Vercel in the task. Next.js like the interesting part about Next.js is that in addition to this UI thing, you're also able to handle data and like project like paging, routes and all of that. What is a route? I will tell you what a route is. You see this /reference /react /hooks. This is a route. Sada Reactor, you don't have routing by default. You have to use libraries to get routing. So if you want URLs like this, you need libraries for that. You could make it yourself, but the best way to do it, or like the easiest way to go about it, is using a library. There are libraries like, there are full stack frameworks like SJS, or if you want just the routing, we call it React Router. Ellam documentation under. Your team lead will decide what framework they are using, and then you can use AI for a lot of things, but I recommend you also learn how this stuff works. Always read the documentation and understand how things are going on. In Next.js, you are able to, in addition to just like in addition to just doing UI, you also have this thing called server components. What is a server component? A server component is something that renders the UI or the HTML in the server and then sends the HTML to the browser, and then the rest of the UI starts rendering. So it's for speed. Anyway, you have a lot of frameworks like this, and that's pretty much all you need to know about getting started, at least. Any experience which is in padicholu, you guys. Okay, so far I hope things have been clear. I don't have much else to say. This is just the basics of everything. You guys can go ahead with the projects then when we set it up, and you will get hands-on experience on how to do all of these things. If you have questions during the project, you can ask any of us. You can ask your team lead, or you can ask me personally, or the team personally, and we will tell you what you're doing wrong and how to fix it and all that. Okay, that's all for today's session.
ഇനി ആർക്കെങ്കിലും ഈ ലേണിംഗ് സെക്ഷനിൽ എന്തെങ്കിലും സംശയം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ വീഡിയോയിൽ പോയി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പോസ് ചെയ്ത് ഈ പ്രോജക്റ്റ് ടു ഡു ലിസ്റ്റ് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ചെയ്ത് പഠിക്കാം. അപ്പൊ വീഡിയോ യൂട്യൂബിലുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പം സ്ട്രീം ചെയ്തത് അവിടെ ഉണ്ടാവില്ല മിലനെ. അത് കണ്ടാൽ മതി. റെഫർ ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് അത് മനസ്സിലാവും.
വേറെ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ എന്നെ പേഴ്സണലി ചോദിക്കാം. That's fine. I will answer when I get the time. ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷൻ
പേഴ്സണലി അവിടെ ഗ്രൂപ്പിലുള്ള ഏത് മെന്ററോട് ചോദിച്ചാലും അവര് പറഞ്ഞു തരും. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ വെബ് ഡെവലപ്മെന്റ് അറിയാൻ ആരെങ്കിലും റെഫർ ചെയ്തോളൂ, കുഴപ്പമില്ല. ആരോട് വേണമെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാം. ചോദിക്കാനുള്ളത് ചോദിക്കണം.
Okay then. ഇന്നത്തെ സെഷൻ അത്രേ ഉള്ളൂ. I hope you guys understood the basics at least. Hope it wasn't too boring, and we will see you the next time. Bye bye.